At Thanksgiving dinner, my mom beamed. Let's toast to the child who truly embraced our family values. Everyone applauded my sister, who was seated at the head of the table. My spot. It was a fold-out chair by the kitchen. I stood and said, "You know, it's good to hear the truth sometimes." I headed for the door, but my dad's voice, surprisingly strong, cut through the silence. "Wait, tell them. I'm Simon, 42, and this Thanksgiving felt like a turning point I never saw coming. I've always known my family wasn't what you'd call close, but this year, things were more tense, colder than usual. I don't want to say toxic, but after what happened, it's hard not to. A little context. I'm the middle child of 3. Evelyn, my older sister, is exactly the kind of person mom and dad love to brag about. The model daughter who knows what it means to carry on the family legacy. She's polished, successful by their standards, and always playing the part perfectly. Felix, my younger brother, is quieter, more agreeable, and mom favors him just enough to keep the peace. Then there's me, Simon, the black sheep, the one who dared to think differently, who didn't want to fit into their narrow little box. Thanksgiving at my parents' house has always been a test of endurance. The food is fine, but the real meal is the undercurrent of judgment, the way mom watches you like a hawk, waiting to pounce on any sign of weakness or disrespect. Dad sits back, usually quiet, but I could always tell he's approving behind the scenes. This year, when I arrived, the first thing I noticed was how perfectly everything was arranged. The big oak dining table was set with the best china, gleaming silverware, and spotless crystal glasses. Mom had even gone so far as to iron every napkin to a perfect crease. Evelyn was already there, seated at the head of the table, smiling that practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. Felix was off to one side, chatting quietly with Dad. And me? I got the fold-out chair by the kitchen doorway, not even close to the table. When I asked, Mom smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, Simon, you know how precious the family traditions are. We want you close enough to help with the serving." I nodded, though it stung more than I wanted to admit. The evening wore on with the usual rehearsed conversations. Evelyn told stories about her latest promotion, the wonderful people she worked with, and how she was the pillar of her team. Mom nodded eagerly, clearly basking in her daughter's spotlight. Felix chipped in now and then with his own modest updates, always careful not to overshadow Evelyn. Then came the moment that cut the deepest. Just as we were about to start the meal, Mom stood, lifted her glass, and said, "Let's toast to the child who truly embraced our family values." A beat of silence. Then the entire table erupted in applause. Everyone looked at Evelyn. She gave a little nod, a tight smile, soaking in the praise as if she'd just won a Lifetime Achievement Award. I sat back, the clapping still ringing in my ears, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in that room. No nod, no word, no acknowledgement. The meal began, but I was no longer hungry. Watching Evelyn at the head of the table, glowing in the spotlight, while I sat on that flimsy chair, I felt invisible. Not just ignored, but erased. After a while, the conversations took a predictable turn. How Evelyn was the only one who really understood what the family stood for. How she was carrying the torch for all of us. I could hear the whispered criticisms aimed at me, the subtle digs disguised as jokes about my lack of direction or how I'd abandoned our roots. That's when I finally stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the tile floor, all eyes turning to me. "You know," I said, voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "It's good to hear the truth sometimes." I didn't wait for anyone to respond. I headed straight for the door, the cool night air hitting my face like a relief from the suffocating atmosphere inside. But just as my hand touched the doorknob, my dad's voice stopped me. Clear, firm, impossible to ignore. "Wait, tell them." I turned slowly, eyes scanning the room. Mom looked stunned, Evelyn's smile faltered, and Felix seemed genuinely surprised. The silence stretched as everyone waited to see what Dad meant. When my dad said, "Wait, tell them," it was like the dam broke. The room, which had been tense but polite moments before, now felt charged with a strange mix of confusion and anticipation. Every eye was on me, expecting something, anything, to fill that heavy silence. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. I wasn't sure if Dad's words were some kind of rare show of support or if he was just trying to keep up appearances. But I realized that whatever happened next, this moment was my chance to finally say what I'd been holding inside for years. So, you want me to tell them what? I asked quietly, scanning the faces of my family. Mom's smile had disappeared, replaced by something tight and guarded. Evelyn looked sharp, like a cat ready to pounce, and Felix was already shifting uncomfortably in his seat. Dad cleared his throat. You know what I mean. Tell them the truth about everything. I swallowed. I could feel the eyes burning into me. Expectations, judgment, anticipation. And a surprising flicker of something else, maybe guilt, maybe fear, passing through Dad's expression before he masked it with neutrality. All right, I said, and the room seemed to lean in, waiting for a show. Here's the truth, I started. The child who truly embraced our family values. That's Evelyn. At least, that's what you all like to say. I gestured toward her, and she held my gaze with a confident smirk. But those family values are the very things that have kept me at the edges of this family, pushed me into the shadows. And I'm done pretending they mean something good. Mom's face flushed slightly, but she said nothing. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, and Felix shifted even more in his seat. I continued, voice firm. For years, I've watched how values are used to judge who belongs and who doesn't. How loyalty really means blind obedience to your idea of success, your idea of what's right. How speaking up gets you labeled ungrateful or rebellious. A few heads shifted uncomfortably, but no one interrupted. You've praised Evelyn for being perfect, for following every rule, for making sure the family looks good on the outside. But what about the rest of us? What about the rest of me? I paused, feeling my voice catch a little. I've always tried to be myself, to build my own path. But that path apparently doesn't fit your narrow vision. And so, I get the fold-out chair by the kitchen, the cold smiles, the whispers behind my back. Mom's jaw tightened. She opened her mouth, but Dad cut her off with a raised hand. Let him finish. That surprised me. Dad was always the quiet enabler, the one who let Mom take the lead in these power plays. But tonight, something was different. I took a breath and pressed on. You call Evelyn the pillar of the family, but she's also the one who made sure I never got a fair chance. The one who spread rumors about me not being serious enough, who undermined me at family events, who made sure I was always the problem to be handled. Evelyn's smirk faded, replaced by cold disdain. That's ridiculous, Simon. You've always been difficult. You don't take responsibility for anything. I take responsibility for being who I am, and I'm tired of your definition of family values that only serve your image, I said, voice growing stronger. Felix, who had been quiet, finally spoke up, voice shaky. Simon, you're blowing this out of proportion. Mom and Dad just want what's best for all of us. What's best for you all, maybe, I replied. But not for me. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Mom stood suddenly, smoothing her blouse. This isn't the place for this, she said sharply. You're ruining Thanksgiving. I'm ruining your fantasy, I answered. The truth is always messy. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was almost a surreal interruption. Mom's face tightened again. Who could that be? She muttered. Dad stood and walked toward the door, opening it with a cautious glance behind him. A man stepped inside, dressed sharply, holding a folder under his arm. Everyone froze. Good evening, the man said, voice calm but firm. I'm Mr. Langley, the lawyer representing Simon. The room erupted, not with applause, but with shock and confusion. Mom's face went pale, her eyes darting to Dad. Evelyn's perfect mask cracked just a little. Felix looked stunned. Mr. Langley continued. I'm here to present some documents regarding the family estate and other matters that need immediate attention. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mom's voice was low but icy. Simon, what is this? I stepped forward, calm now, feeling a surge of clarity I hadn't had before. I'm done being the forgotten one, the scapegoat. Tonight, I'm taking what's mine. Everyone stared, the old power balance cracking in the cold kitchen light. Mom's eyes flashed with fury. You think you can just waltz in and demand half of what Evelyn and I have worked for? Not just half, I said. What's rightfully mine? Evelyn stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. You're delusional. This family made you. Without us, you'd have nothing. That's exactly the problem, I said. You don't see me as family unless I fit your perfect little mold. Felix looked between us, the weight of years of silence finally bearing down on him. Dad stepped in, voice quieter but firm. We can't let this destroy us. But you already have, I said. The room felt like it was about to collapse, the floor beneath us cracking open with all the resentment, jealousy, and secrets that had been buried for too long. And then Mom, the matriarch who always controlled the narrative, let out a laugh, cold and bitter. "If you think you're walking away with anything tonight, you're dreaming." I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel fear or doubt. I felt something stronger, resolve. Because this wasn't just about an inheritance. It was about taking back my dignity. About exposing a family that wore its smiles like masks while stabbing me in the back. The moment Mom laughed, cold and sharp, the whole room shifted. It wasn't the laugh of someone who thought this was funny. It was the laugh of someone who was already planning the next move. The one who thrived on control and power. "Dreaming," she said, voice low but icy. "Simon, you don't know what you're messing with." I met her gaze steadily. "No, Mom. I know exactly what I'm doing. And I'm done being the family joke." The lawyer, Mr. Langley, stepped forward and placed the folder on the kitchen counter, flipping it open with a calm authority that made even Mom pause. "This," he said, pointing at the papers, "is the will your father signed last year. Simon, you've been officially recognized as a rightful heir. There's enough here to ensure your share, legally binding." I could see Mom's eyes flicker in panic, but she masked it quickly, lips pressed tight. Evelyn sneered. "Dad was pressured into this, no doubt. You can't just waltz in and take what's ours." "I'm not waltzing anywhere," I replied. "I'm claiming what's mine." The next few hours were a whirlwind of heated exchanges, thinly veiled threats, and old wounds reopened. But what surprised me most was Dad. For years, he'd been quiet, the silent partner in Mom's schemes. But tonight, he showed cracks, moments of hesitation, and even subtle nods my way. Later, after the guests had left and the house was quiet except for the faint ticking of the hallway clock, Dad pulled me aside. "Simon," he said, voice low, "I've been carrying secrets. Things your mother doesn't want you to know. If you want to fight for your place in this family, you'll need more than just the law." He handed me a worn envelope, yellowed with age. "Read this. It's why things are the way they are." That night, alone in my childhood bedroom, I opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of letters, old photos, and documents, proof of years of manipulation, favoritism, and even financial misdeeds by Mom and Evelyn. They'd been systematically cutting me out, taking more than their share, twisting the truth behind closed doors. It was the fuel I needed. This wasn't just about an inheritance or a dinner seat. It was about exposing a family built on lies. Over the next weeks, I started quietly gathering more evidence. I hired a private investigator, discreetly contacted old family friends, and even reached out to some of Evelyn's business associates who had complained quietly about her ruthless behavior behind the scenes. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. Evelyn was far from the perfect daughter. She had embezzled from family accounts, sabotaged Felix's chances at promotions to keep the spotlight, and spread vicious rumors about me to keep me sidelined. Mom wasn't innocent either. She had hidden assets, forged signatures on documents, and orchestrated a web of control that kept everyone under her thumb. Felix, who had seemed passive, confessed one night over coffee that he felt trapped. "They made us all play their game," he said. "I'm tired of pretending." With his reluctant cooperation, I started piecing together a plan. It was slow, careful work, not a dramatic confrontation, but a strategic unraveling of their power. Then came the moment I invited Mom, Dad, Evelyn, and Felix to a family meeting. I told them it was to discuss the estate, but really, it was the stage for my next move. The setting was deliberate, our old family home's living room, where so many of their manipulations had taken place. I laid out the documents on the coffee table, one by one, watching their expressions shift from disbelief to panic. "Mom, Evelyn," I began, "you've built this family image on control, manipulation, and lies. It's time the truth came out." Mom's face hardened, but Evelyn looked pale. Felix avoided eye contact. I didn't let up. I detailed the evidence, the forged documents, the financial tricks, the emotional manipulation. Every piece chipped away at their carefully constructed facade. "Why did you do this?" I asked, voice calm but fierce. Mom's response was chilling. "Because you threatened everything we built. Because you couldn't be trusted." Evelyn sneered. "You were always the problem, Simon. Too stubborn, too independent. This is how families survive, by keeping order." I shook my head. "No. This is how families destroy themselves. The meeting ended in chaos, shouting, accusations, slammed doors. But something had shifted. The power dynamics had changed. I wasn't the outcast anymore. I held the cards. But with power came resistance. Mom and Evelyn didn't give up. They launched their own attacks, trying to turn Felix against me, calling old friends with lies about my character, even attempting legal maneuvers to block my claims. I expected it. What I didn't expect was how deeply they would sink into villainy. One afternoon, I received a call from Felix, voice shaking. "Simon, Mom's trying to make me sign papers that would cut you out entirely. She's threatening me, saying I'll lose everything if I don't comply." It was the first time I realized this fight wasn't just legal or emotional. It was a battle for survival. I reassured him, "Don't sign anything without talking to me first. We'll get through this." And we did. Slowly, methodically, Felix started breaking free from their grip. Months passed, and the war of wills continued. I built alliances, relatives who had felt sidelined, family friends who'd seen the truth but never spoke up. I even managed to get some community leaders involved when it became clear that Mom's influence extended beyond just family. Each step forward was met with a counterattack, but I refused to back down. I hired a financial expert to audit the estate. We uncovered more discrepancies, hidden accounts, and questionable transactions. Evelyn tried to keep up appearances publicly, but privately, her veneer cracked. She sent thinly veiled threats, messages implying she knew things about my past that could ruin me. I ignored them. The truth was my shield. Then came the day of the family's annual summer gala, a prestigious event that Evelyn had always used to cement her status. This year, I wasn't invited, but I made sure to be there anyway, not as a guest, but as a revelation. Standing just outside the grand ballroom, I handed the event organizer a folder containing copies of all the evidence we had gathered. The organizer's face paled as she read through the documents. Inside the gala, Evelyn was mingling, radiant as ever, telling stories, laughing with politicians and business leaders. Mom was by her side, the perfect hostess. But outside, quietly and deliberately, I was about to pull the curtain back on everything. The night of the gala arrived with all its usual pomp. The chandeliers glittering, the chatter of polished voices, the clink of glasses filled with sparkling water. Evelyn moved through the crowd like a queen reigning over her kingdom, flawless and untouchable. Mom was beside her, the perfect picture of pride and control. But I wasn't inside the ballroom. Instead, I was just outside the main entrance, holding the folder of evidence tightly. I handed it to the event organizer, a woman I'd spoken with carefully over the past weeks. Her eyes widened as she flipped through the pages: bank statements, signed affidavits from family friends, records of forged signatures, and even recorded conversations where Mom and Evelyn discussed their plans to sideline me. I watched as her face paled, then resolutely nodded. "What do you want me to do?" she asked quietly. "Make sure the right people see this," I said. "This gala is where the family's reputation is on the line. It's time the truth came out, publicly." She agreed. Inside, Evelyn was just about to give a toast, a moment she had clearly rehearsed many times. Her smile was radiant, her voice warm as she spoke of family and legacy. The crowd was hanging on every word. Then the lights flickered. The music stopped abruptly. A hush fell over the ballroom. Before anyone could react, a projector flickered to life against one wall, displaying the first slide, a headline that read, "The Dark Truth Behind the Perfect Family." A voice echoed through the speakers, calm, steady, and unmistakably mine. "Good evening. You know me as Simon, the forgotten middle child, the one always on the sidelines. Tonight, I'm here to tell you the truth about the family you admire, the values they claim to uphold, and the lies that have been carefully hidden for years." Images flashed on the screen, bank statements showing missing funds, letters revealing betrayals, excerpts from phone calls exposing deceit. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Evelyn's smile vanished, replaced by shock and fury. Mom's face was ashen. "This family has been built on manipulation, greed, and control," I continued. "My sister Evelyn embezzled funds from our family accounts. My mother forged signatures to keep me out of the estate. They tried to silence me, to erase me." Voices started murmuring, questions rising like a tide. From the back of the room, a local news reporter pushed forward, microphone in hand. Simon, is this true? What do you expect to happen now? I expect accountability, I said firmly. No more lies. No more favoritism. I'm reclaiming my place, not just in the family, but in the truth. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The gala was cut short. Media outlets caught wind of the revelations overnight, publishing stories that painted my family in an unflattering light. Sponsors pulled their support from Mom's charity boards. Evelyn lost several key business partnerships as her reputation for dishonesty spread. Felix, finally freed from their influence, publicly apologized to me and stepped away from the family drama, focusing on rebuilding his own life. Mom retreated into silence, isolated and stripped of the social standing she'd so carefully curated. Evelyn tried to fight back with lawyers and public statements, but the evidence was overwhelming. She lost control over family assets, and her business began to crumble. As for me, I took what was rightfully mine. The estate was settled fairly, and I finally felt the weight of years of invisibility lift. But more than the money or the assets, it was the reclamation of my dignity and truth that mattered most. I don't pretend this healed everything. The wounds run deep, and the family I once knew is fractured beyond repair. But sometimes, justice isn't about forgiveness or reconciliation. Sometimes, it's about standing up, exposing the darkness, and refusing to be silenced any longer. So that's where I stand now, free from the shadows, finally seen for who I am, and ready to build my own legacy on my own terms. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.